You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the Meta. The Meta controls everything. The Meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
Hello! We're here!
Everyone.
Hi!
Let's make sure we can hear me this time.
Yes, I didn't mute you this time because that was a Skype thing. So yeah, you're good to go.
We should have a good show today. We have Asher Elias and Arch Sarah joining us. Arch is actually going to be for our international segment, amusingly enough, but will be hopefully speaking the entire time whenever he feels like it.
Yes.
And Asher, of course, is the man, the myth, the legend, who is in charge of an organization that doesn't exist.
Yeah, Arch is going to be our Scottish flag bearer today, but he had a name for it, and how he says flag, and that's really amazing. So
I see the Goonstorm is recruiting thing is there.
Yeah. So one of our most patriotic patrons on the Meta Show is Sherrar, and he made this for me recently, and he wants this bee. He wants a smug bee as his like BB, and so he made this. So I told him I'd put it on the Meta Show today. But yeah, so yeah, it's gonna be a crazy day because we got a lot to talk about, and I'm about to be as clickbaity as humanly possible today.
We gotta be careful here because I'm getting like the connection between you is too slow for good video, which is very confusing.
Oh, that's because that's only for sharing screens.
Ah.
Because I'm sharing the screen for you to see your thing, so I don't. Yeah, you know. Oh fuck, Zadia just 31 months. Holy shit, that's a long time.
Serious. So we're gonna do some shoutouts here. We have, we also saw Salomon had resubbed while we were away.
A long time.
Zadia 31, Tingashin, F for Moloch, which is hilarious. It's great news. We're gonna be talking about the kill of the Moloch today. And a lot of other things. So let me get into the mix here. Let me try to, one of the things that I was talking about just before the show started is that sometimes I'm a little bit tired, as the mitten goes, before the Meta Show, because I've usually been talking for like 3 hours before the Meta Show because we have Kremlin meetings, Illuminati meetings, other organizations within Goonstorm, and then the Fireside Chat. So usually got a 30-minute break, and I gotta get back in there. But hopefully, Boat won't have to do all the talking this time.
Yeah, I don't mind. So yeah, let's jump into
Asher
what's
and Arch
happening.
will be able to. So yeah, we're going to be going over today's top story. We're going to be talking about is the same thing happening over and over again? Is history repeating itself too much? We're going to be talking about, for international segment, we're going to be having Arch Sarah is going to be talking, actually can speak Scots, which is something that I didn't even know existed. And hopefully we won't be talking about Scottish independence because that is always something that results in utter chaos in Illuminati. The death of the first Satia, and the hilarious story of Test bogarting the Moloch BPC and then getting smart bombed, Hail Satan, and it getting destroyed. And then we're going to be talking about a random drama with PL, skill injector changes, Proby Titans, and just general gossip and drama. So let's get some shoutouts here.
It's funny how you didn't read it as clickbaity as I tried to word it. That's great.
I'm allergic to clickbait, but Bode is definitely right at that. So Sally Selman for 6 months in a row. Hi, Bode Mittens. What up, dude? Sally's part of the Fan Fest Roll Around Together crew. Too Damn Fresh. Twitch Prime Executive Outcomes or EXE Villain. I always never know exactly how to say your name, dude. Thank you so much. And we also have Calculating 22. Zandriel, 8 months. Calculating 22, and yeah.
That donation. The nice puppy.png. Also, our donations stay a little longer now. That makes me happy because sometimes it's hard to read it. But yeah, so yeah, we'll jump right in, and as we move along, it's going to be an interesting day because you're going to hear some things about our stories today that might sound very Eve political, like one-sided, which is something that I try to avoid here on the show. But today I'm not going to.
Are we going full Fox News? Is that
yeah. There's going to be some
in honor of the death
spicy.
of Roger Ailes. We're going to be.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty spicy on some of the way I word things.
We've always been pretty fair and balanced on this program.
Yeah,
so
we believe in fair and balanced news here at INN.
Before we move on to our top story, we have some wonderful updates for you guys. You'll notice that you're seeing a lot more coverage of fights. The other day I was at a fight, so it's possible I'm going to take on like a broadcaster personality. Someone said I should be Walter Boatkite.
Walter Cronkite. It was Walter
Cronkite. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a great suggestion. So actually, that does remind me. This is something that Asher brought up, and so Bode has volunteered to start doing a lot more like news reporting, like when a fight breaks out in EVE. We're going to be trying to what you guys have been seeing basically since mid-April on INN is trying to have a lot more Imperium news on Imperium News, which is a wild and crazy thing. So when something is of interest to folks in the Imperium, not just in all of EVE, we want it on INN. So part of that is Boat and some of the other streamers are going to be doing a more focused job on being there to cover fights when something breaks out, so you don't have to like watch Daopa or Evlog, who apparently Evlog is actually a really funny guy and everybody loves him, so there's no problem with that. But we get a lot of complaints. Yeah, a lot of people are like, why don't we actually have these fights covered on INN itself? So Boat's going to be all over that. So that's point one. Point two is well, you want to comment about that, Bode?
Yeah, so like when you look at guys like Daopa, and not to say anything negative about Daopa as much as I do say negative things about Daopa, he tends to spam ads with his business model. And then you look at a guy like Zarvox, and you'll get like Channel Zarvox spammed at you 1,000 times. So those tend to be just annoying. Like you don't get what you want out of it. And those are two guys who probably have never FC'd a fleet, so they don't understand the dynamics of what's going on. And so you get guys like .com, myself, even or some of our favorite streamers that are on here are FCs. So they understand, like, when they're watching
Plex,
that fight.
Also, Plex Live, I think, would be getting FCs.
Getting someone who understands what's going on.
Exactly.
Right, and so they can show you the most important things. Like when we watched that afterburning or micro warp driving, spark bombing fax zoom around the grid. That was the most important thing to watch. But I hate ads. I even teach people how to not do ads.
So one of the things that's sort of a follow-on from this is something that Asher pointed out is there are a lot of people who are basically big names in EVE for having a special skill, right? But they don't want to be a writer full-time, right? On INN, we have this user submissions thing, and actually, Boat, while I'm running my mouth here, if you can dig up the link for the user submissions.
Yeah, do it right now.
Chat, I'd appreciate that. So one of the things that Asher was pointing out is, we have it such that anybody can write an article on INN, and if it passes muster, we'll post it. But there are a lot of people out there who are experts in their field, like Asher is an expert in his field, and they would like to write an article like maybe once a month or maybe once every 2 months, but they don't want to be staff full-time because writing is simply not their focus. So at Asher and Aerith's suggestion, what we're going to be doing now is if you do write for INN as a one-off, but you don't want to be joining the staff. Like if you join the staff, you can write more than once a month, and there's like a system that's all set up, and you can get space bucks for writing about EVE. But we're basically, for user submissions that get accepted now, we're going to pay people 500 million ISK. So if you send a user submission and it gets accepted, the limit will be like once a month. If you want to write more than once a month, we need you to actually join the staff. But if you want to do a drive-by, if you're like an FC or you have an issue that you want to get up on a soapbox about, and we do publish it, please include in your user submission what your EVE name is and where you'd like us to send ISK, because we're going to start doing this. We want to get more Imperium news on Imperium News. We will accept outside non-Imperium submissions. This isn't like a loyalty test where we won't pay people who aren't part of the Imperium.
Yeah, right. Like if it's good news, it's good news. Because one thing we've encountered, like you look at a lot of situations, and we've been talking about this more and more in the past month. A big fight will go down. We'll have someone streaming it, even if it's myself or others. Gamel, that's the name I was trying to think of earlier. Streaming it, but then we won't have like a live blog up. I mean, we've had some pretty famous live blogs go up where they've made major tech websites because they talk about, they show EVE in a light that you don't see normally, like an 8-hour tie-dye fight, and the guy live blogs it for 8 hours. And he talks about going to the kitchen to cook and coming back and his ship's still alive, and things like that. So you're going to start seeing a lot more of that.
Also, Moomin has a good point that he brings up here, is that it does need to be actually be exclusive to INN. You can't just like post something on your blog or post on EVE News 24 and then come by to submit it to INN. What if we were simple just write member we want to write well, goons are awesome, things like that. You can write whatever you want, basically. I mean, we publish articles. Like, one of the things that's been freeing about the direction of INN compared to TMC is we have stopped trying to be super neutral like Space CNN. It's Imperium news. We want to have stuff that people in the Imperium want to read about. Now, stuff that people in the Imperium want to read about doesn't always include Eve. Now, sometimes it's coffee. Actually, articles about how to make coffee from dudes in the Imperium have been among our most popular articles. Pork Butts articles about cooking have been fantastic. In fact, people are constantly asking me to do a cooking show, Cooking with Mittens, because I love to cook.
Yeah, someone asked me to do that because I like to eat food while I stream sometimes, because I'll make really great food and then realize I have to stream, and then they're like, could you please just like go stream how to cook it rather than eating it?
Yeah, so like the idea of the user submissions thing and paying people space bucks for user submissions, if they don't want to join the staff, or maybe as a precursor to joining the staff, is, you know, if there's a funny story about something that happens in one of our squads, like Space Violence was running around and there's this silly thing that's happening, and if I'm seeing about, you know, people are giggling about it on Jabber, why can't we also giggle about it on INN? So you don't have to be a fleet commander or whatever. Now, if your writing sucks, then we're not going to just publish garbage, right? Because there has to be some quality control standards. But it's an interesting direction. We want, you know, the INN sort of groping towards not necessarily being BBC or like PBS or something, but we want to investigate things that are important to our community. And sometimes that means it's important to all of the EVE community. A good example is like the I Am Olivia scam. Like our editors, I had nothing to do with that.
So Vice News? We're reporters on the ground who get into
Vice
like
News.
Because you think
Vice
about
News in space.
Yeah,
because actually be pretty badass.
There's a lot of times where we talk to people and get involved with people that really do hate us in game, but they still let us come along so they can get their side of the story out there.
Vice News in space. So basically, sometimes Vice News is like, well, we're going to do an article about like random shit.
Yeah, some of it's weird.
We're going to go
my favorite
talk about porn or other random stuff.
But my favorite one is
we're
when
also
ISIS,
a news organization.
Like when ISIS was still coming out, like they went and embedded themselves in ISIS, right? So that stuff like that is, it's, you know, you could do it in EVE where like PL hates us, but they'll still talk to our writers and tell us the stories, or they'll come on our shows, and you know what I mean. So yeah, the Vice News of EVE Online.
I mean, you know, Vice has some challenges in and of itself, but like we're sort of like trying to define, like when we see really good people joining the INN team, we know that we're getting the dial closer to where we want to be with it. And so when Asher was suggesting this, anyway, we've talked about this too much, right?
Yeah, we gotta move on.
See the Meta Show,
but there's things coming. So
Uller has subscribed. More before we do the top story. Uller, more shout outs here, and make sure while I was running my mouth that we don't miss things. Yep, I think that was the last resub. Oh, and Zandale. Sorry. Zandril. Yep. Okay, now we're good. Let's hit the top story. Let's do it.
Also, Shirar, thank you for your donation of $5. That was pretty hilarious to read. Yeah, so today's top story, we hinted at this last week, but I wanted to talk about it as more and more time goes on, especially since the revival of Goons, since we moved to Delve. You're starting to see a dynamic shift away from a lot of the way the game was played year after year to a more recent way of looking at the game. And so I brought Asher on here today because I like Asher's opinion on things like this. It's more of like a philosophical discussion of the way EVE meta works and the way things work. So the first thing is, you know, are things continuing like they have been year after year? Let's look at, like, say, 2008. I might do this out of order here. So let's look outside of outliers. Okay, so you have like some snakes in the grass, and we won't mention who those might be. Some of those people. You don't really have what I like to refer to as enemies anymore. Like, you know, in 2008, you had the bad guys versus the good guys. You had Bob versus everybody. Triumvirate trying to kill the North. You had Losec trying to kill Ratters in writing. Like, you just had this, like, you knew who these people were, right? You knew Red Alliance was Red Alliance, and they were going to be fighting Bob, or you knew Providence was going to, you know, like CVA, the old CVA, was going to be fighting Red Alliance, or you knew Goons was going to fight AAA. You knew the bad guys, you knew the good guys, depending on what side you were on. Nowadays, I think it's muddled, right? And I use the example of the other night's fight. You have PL shot Brave. Then Test and CO2 shoot PL. We shot CO2. Then Test shoots us. PL then shoots Test. Goons shoot PL. It's like, the side, there was no, like, who's blue there? Like, who the fuck is blue to each other there? Everyone hated each other in that situation. So there's no, like, real enemy. There's no one you can point to and say, fuck that guy.
Well, I mean,
you know?
Asher, you go. Yeah. Also, Asher, please introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that.
Everyone.
Hi, Asher.
Yeah, I'm Asher Elias. I am the 23rd best FC in Goonswarm Federation.
Hoping to make 20 seconds soon.
Yeah, I'm just crossing my fingers, knocking on wood, doing anything I can, really. So it's that your enemies have become normalized, especially for someone like Mittens or you, Boat. You've been around so long, and when you first knew them, your blood ran hot, but you can't stay that intense for a decade. It's just not possible, right?
Really?
I don't know. I don't know about that though. Not with me.
That's my opinion. But so I think that's not just for YouTube, but that's for people who've been around for a long time anywhere. On top of that,
I think it's a fair statement for a lot of people. Like, you might have outliers. Like, just because I still basically get crazy raged out if I start talking about the Great War or other things that have happened in the past. Right. I am an outlier, right? I think
I would agree with that.
For a lot of the player base is accurate. So please continue.
On top of that they've become normalized in the sense that before there were FanFest meetups and you got to watch a videotape of these guys talking like normal human beings, it was a lot easier to visualize them as sort of a dangerous other. And now when you see just sort of a pleasant gentleman talking about having fun with his spaceship friends, it becomes harder to maintain that sort of hatred that you had before. And then I think the third thing is that the betrayals of yesterday, time heals wounds, especially video game wounds. I was talking about this on Reddit where some guy was like, I did my podcast with Reza from Waffles, and he was like, he hates this guy, but he actually doesn't. And I'm like, well, it's a video game hate. I don't really hate anyone in this video game, even my enemies, but I just game hate them. And that's a different thing. But the newer betrayals, I think, they still burn hot. Like, if you get a goon going about CO2 or GigX, you're going to hear the average goon is going to be a lot more angry about them than they would if you started talking about like Elise Randolph or someone like that, right?
Yeah, and I think I agree there. The outliers thing, I would say, Mittens, not speaking for Mittens, but Mittens, myself, you, maybe a few others, there are outliers out there who could effectively say, okay, I still hate that guy, even if I've hung out with him in real life. There's some dudes that I'd love partying with at Vegas or other places where I'm like, yeah, NE, fuck you. I hope you die. Keep dying. Die again. Like, I'll headshot a guy 99% of the time, and I don't really hate his alliance, or I don't dislike his alliance, but just fuck that guy in particular, So, but that's the question here, though.
I want to bring in Art Shara on this because even though he is because he is a diplomat, he's a diplomat in Goonswarm Federation, and so he gets a chance to see all of the diplomatic conversations that go through our organization. What is your opinion as a relatively new, in the grand scheme of things, diplomat about the emotional tenor of the game now, as opposed to maybe what you've seen before or heard about?
Well, I have to completely disagree with Asher's theory that time heals all wounds. I'm seeing a lot of open wounds from a very long time ago, from even before I was in Goons. And people are just constantly coming back and hating us for old grievances. People constantly coming up saying, F Goons, you destroyed my freighter 4 years ago, I will get revenge.
I think it's an interesting point, because where we are in an organization in many ways can determine our contact with other players. So maybe what's happening here is that because Art Shara is a diplomat and he's seeing a lot of communications across all levels from a whole different pile of organizations. Meanwhile, it's possible that Asher, as part of the FC club, right, and Boat 2 are part of. There's a few Discord channels where lots of FCs hang out and they all know each other. They all have something in common, right? Because they're all FCs, and so eventually it may be a situation where the fact that they have more in common, being FCs and going through these shared experiences a lot, results in more of a fraternization and people being less pissed off. Asher, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think you're totally incorrect. I think that there's certainly, like I said, normalization of relations when you talk to these guys and you're viewing it very dispassionately. Like, I made a wrong maneuver there, and you had you had a good Loki. He did really well, and you become very technical about your craft. It becomes probably less passionate. So I agree with you there, but I do think that probably if you talk to the average goon today, they weren't even around for Bob's. It's hard, it's like being told, hey, these are our ancestral enemies. It's different than being like, oh, these guys personally betrayed me.
Right. But like, all right. So let's look at it like that too. And so we go with the cycles. I feel like too, and then maybe Mittens might be able to look at this one way or another, is that when an alliance, like say Tri, for example, now they're known as NC Dot, when they've formed 8, 9, 20 times, it's really feels like it's hard to keep hating them when they just keep dying over and over again. Now, of course, NC Dot's been around longer than any iteration of Tri, but it feels like that burning hate to like, yeah, fuck that guy, other than maybe Vince himself. It's hard to do. I mean, even I have to fight, like, here we go, like, for example, I have to find ways to reinvent my hate in Eve. Like, I've been mellowed out when Eve comes along. Like, I don't really get the, like, hate burning fire or whatever anymore. But, like, this new channel I'm in Discord, I will live stream it, so to speak, through my show. To, like, during the fight the other day, I was just talking about what all these different FCs were telling each other about, and the channel name is literally No Leaks, Please. But well, it gets a comedy to it, right? So to understand like where people are coming from, like why someone's throwing poop at this guy or why someone's hating, I think it's a more of, instead of an alliance level of hate, I think it's more of a personal level of hate. Like this FC wants to see that FC get murdered, so he's going to take down this.
That is a very good point, Bode. I actually, this dovetails exactly into sort of my theory on this. Is that so? What Bode is saying is that in many ways this has devolved to being individual personal rivalries. Right. The history of Eve, when we talk about the Great War, when we talk about hate at an Eve level as a driver of content, what we used to see, my theory, is that it was essentially, and I believe it still is. It's just that I think that certain people don't see it as much, and that depends. We all are basically blind men groping this elephant and describing it back to each other. Is tribal warfare, right? Like there is
elephant groping, you say?
Elephant groping and tribal warfare. It's a good segue, right? So,
yes.
You end up back in the day, we would have very clearly defined tribes. Now, one of the things I've noticed about entities like CO2 and like PL, NC Dot actually less so. NC Dot is in many ways much more of an old school kind of tribe. Where you have people with a very clearly defined tribal identity, and they have another tribe that they hate, right? Goonswarm hated Band of Brothers. Both of those groups were tribes. And so the level of bitterness that grew out of the Great War, which is people looking back on as sort of the glory days of hatred, is something that you don't see today from my perspective with like CO2. So CO2 is a recent example of traitors, but right. It's really just GigX, right? People even within CO2 are like, well, we didn't really want to do that. And CO2's membership changes so much that the attitude on the ground is basically, well, GigX is a dick. And most people, when they're talking about fuck CO2, they're actually not talking about fuck CO2 because there's a lot of people who were former CO2 that are in the Imperium right now.
Right, like Corpse will come join us from CO2. It's
exactly.
Like, that Corpse cool, but fuck
and a lot
that
of them
guy.
Aren't. It's basically just like it's like what's both saying is that in many ways you see less tribe on tribe warfare, I believe, in EVE today, then you see individual personal rivalries. Like Pro God Legend doesn't like goons kind of thing. You might see an individual versus a group kind of thing. You might see an individual versus an individual. But we do not currently live in an era where there's lots of knee-jerk tribe on tribe anything. Because
you'll see that a lot lately too in the way fights happen. And maybe Asher can point to this with our new way we have our reds, our enemy FCs, and oranges or white coloring is for just the alliance as a whole. So it's that pointed, okay, that's a doomed chinchilla fleet. Fuck that guy. Where I see this and happen sometimes with Homeland Defense, where you'll know the FC is just some random test guy, and it's like, oh, let Theta deal with it. But if you know it's Pro God Legend himself coming by, a big FC is going to go, oh, I got this. I'm going to fuck him up, And so you'll see that a lot. And I think that pulls into a modern EVE. It's there's more knowledge of the people, right? Because of meetups, because of Discord being out there and places where FCs can get up together and, hey, I know all these FCs now rather than just one guy.
But the people that Art Syrah is reading logs of and having contacts with aren't exactly the people who are sort of in this God forbid, what is it, like Doha or Davos style circuit. Like there is definitely a group of people who are a hyper-connected sort of transnational elite in EVE who are within this group of FCs that jump around between alliances, or a group of alliance leaders who have always been around, and we all know each other and we all see each other at all these meetups. But that is really only like the top 1% of EVE in terms of that many people. Like most of the people who are playing this game, they don't know each other, they don't see each other at meetups. So Art Sarah, like bringing you back into this, we've had these theories here. What do you think are these distinctions, and what's your view on this?
I'm still on the outside looking in on that one. I talk to a lot of people, and I see them getting along amazingly with our FCs. As soon as they talk to me about anything they need us to do, something official, a wall goes up. The hatred is just magically rebuilt.
So the old rivalries rebuilt. So actually, that might be a really good point. Is that it's like there's good goons and there's bad goons, right? So like people will say if they're interacting with somebody who's well known, like Boat or like Asher, they'll be like, well, I don't like goons and I don't like the Imperium, but Asher's all right. So I mean, Asher, do you think there's a possibility that you were getting essentially the sort of token goon treatment?
Oh yeah, I get that a lot. Yeah, I hear that exact phrase. Like,
token goon, seriously?
No, not token goon, but like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of goons, but you're a good guy or whatever, or stuff like that. And yes, Boat?
I have a great segue here because my girlfriend does this where she's like, she'll be angry at me, so she goes, "Oh, you're just acting like a goon," rather than say treating me as like, "Oh, I'm your boyfriend." So that happens in the opposite in real life sometimes with me, but. Go ahead, Ash. Sorry, I just thought that was hilarious.
I actually have a concrete example of this one. Mittens, you'll enjoy this. There's a friend of mine in Goons. I won't name him, but his girlfriend was an SMA, and I'm like, "Why are you in Goons and she's in an SMA? Why don't you just have her join Goons?" She's like, he says, "Well, because she fucking hates Mittens. She doesn't like Mittens." So she's like,
that happens, yeah.
She thinks he's too arrogant, and so she won't join Goons. She's fine being an SMA and an ally. This is a while ago, but she won't join Goons. So there's definitely that exists. Like that exists.
That polarization happens where. Like again, it comes back to that look at that.
Well, leaders are polarizing figures. I mean,
right? Yeah.
Good
ones maybe here's a good way to I like to think of it in the current political analogy of you'll have like the United Nations, and like I think of the elite of EVE as like the United Nations. We all will like try to one up each other in our discussions. Like you'll see, especially with like this recently happens a lot with Sword Dragon and Cat Marcher. They'll go back and forth in there sometimes, and it is fucking hilarious. And then you get these like little peons like Rat Salad or something that tries to come in and talk big and make it out like he's this big FC name who everyone knows and should respect. And then some other like Doom Chichillo come along, but yeah, get the fuck out.
I completely forget to actually look at that channel.
But then you'll have like that going on. So like think about like the UN Council, and then you'll have like the really big names like yourself, and that's like almost like President Trump coming along. It just everybody's gonna hate it. Not to okay. All right, hold on. Before you make that face, not to call you President Trump, but like it's a polarizing figure. It's an individual where when you think of goons, or in this case, United States, everyone thinks of you first, right? It's like, oh, that's Mittens' group. They don't say, oh, that's Merkel Chan's group of guys. Like they'll just say that's the Matani and goons, right?
I mean, that's the way to go. That's the way to go for a fun diversion, though. Like something my dad and I always talk about is like, we'd rather have cars like when we talk about is the Chrysler 300 because it's one of the most polarizing American-made cars. It's a sedan that people either really love or really hate, and I'd rather have a car that someone really loves, and other people might not like it at all, but that person takes a lot of pride in their car than something boring like like a Toyota Camry that's just designed not to offend. And especially in a game, you want leaders like that. You want leaders that either inspire.
Right?
Exactly.
That's the thing is that like I have no problem being called arrogant because from an outside perspective I will seem arrogant because I make no apologies for our people, and the inherent arrogance of being the leader of Goonstorm in this position is I care about our people. I believe our people deserve the best in all of their gameplay experiences, and that there's a lot of very important things that we can do here. And that also means that I fundamentally do not give a shit about anything that anyone who is outside of Goonswarm or our allies in the Imperium thinks about anything, except for advancing the interests of our people. And that is arrogant, because it is essentially, I explicitly state, and I make no apologies about valuing our people and our community above everyone else who is not part of that community.
But that's
and
where
that comes off as arrogance, and I'm entirely
see, that's where my analogy comes in. You can do that, whereas like a guy like Asher will have to come in behind that and be like, okay, random PLFC that Mensch just said, go fucking die. We're going to work with you today, and we're going to dunk CO2. Like you saw today with SV, who just dunked 40 billion in materials from CO2 with PL. So, like, you'll have situations where it's like, the leader will say, yeah, fuck those guys. And then the guy right below the leader will go, okay, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to,
that's a different syndrome, or a different...
All right, but we're getting way off on our segues. Our segues are getting segues.
I kind of think, actually... Arch, what you got?
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, just to add to that, there are different levels, but we all seem to complement each other. Obviously, the Mittani has connections to the other leaders. Asher has connections to other FCs, and have connections to other Diplos, but we are doing really well these days. We seem to be complementing each other more. These connections are very good.
I think that organizationally speaking, we are much more in alignment. I mean, this is like this whole alignment versus agreement discussion of when, somebody insists that everyone must agree. I disagree with that. I think everybody should be, as a group, looking at the same problem from different perspectives. And as long as we're pushing roughly in the same direction, then you have an effective community. I think one of the challenges that I've seen with the EVE experience is, from an Imperium perspective, it may seem like we don't really have enemies anymore, but from my perspective, it's more that the entire galaxy is still our enemy, right? Because after the Casino War, for me, the lines of hatred have blurred, not because I have stopped hating, but because we are simply prioritizing a list of people who need to die. And that list still has everybody from the Casino War on it, and it's just sort of an ordering thing. And so we find ourselves in these situations where we are shooting lots of sides, not because we don't hate anymore from my perspective, but because we hate so much that all of these people have to, and the bullet has to go in somebody first, and then the bullet has to go in somebody second.
I keep like a list, and it's like when Alliance dies, like I think it was TMC left Guardians of the Galaxy disbanded. Not TMC, whatever that group's called. I checked them off the list. Like, they're dead. This guy's dead. SMA's dead. FCON is losing corpse. That corp died. This CO2 trader corp died. Stuff like that. It's like a checkbox. It's like, yep, they're dead. They're dead. They're dead. They're dead. And just going down the list.
Well, I think it's symptomatic.
I'm taking notes.
I think it's symptomatic of EVE having Korean last name syndrome. Koreans have had last names for a really long time, and as any country or group has last names, they conglomerate, right? Like the Dutch only got last names like 200 years ago, so there's tons of last names in the Dutch. But in Korea, where they've had last names for a long time, if you have Kim, Lee, and Park as your last name, you're one of like 67% of Koreans. And that's the same thing that's happened in EVE. It's been around for so long that the little balkanized groups that existed 10 years ago have gotten more and more and more conglomerated into the successful groups.
Yeah.
And if you want to fight them, you basically have to align with someone else now. There's no going on your own, because we're all sort of intertangled in this like pre-World War I web of mutual defense agreements that if a real serious war broke out, you would have everyone coming over because the Duke of because Franz Ferdinand was shot.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things about this, people will often say, and Asher, compared to some of us old farts, is relatively new, but to other people who've recently started playing the game, he's been around for a while. There is a persistent, and I've seen this come up so many times. This is, how every generation always says, like, kids these days have it so easy, blah blah blah. I used to walk uphill both ways to go to school, and if you just stopped eating avocado toast, you'd have houses falling out of the sky and whatever. Back in the day, even in like 2009. Which is still actually, I started playing in late 2005. Right. People would say things like, well, you can't operate on your own anymore, and you always have to find alliances, and everything's like World War I. The reality of EVE's history is ever since, even before the Great War started, it was always a matter of block warfare. And even then, people would always say, man, it really sucks because you can't just go off and do something on your own. You got to be part of a big block. Like, before the Great War started, the entire Galactic East was owned by the Southern Coalition, Locke of Volterra, Knights of the Southern Cross, a whole bunch of other bitches like Veritas Immortalis who are dead. No, because they were
right, they were their own group.
Or Askin, right? So you have the geography in many ways determines the politics, and you still see this, right? So today, the group in the Northwest, Guardians of the Galaxy and all that stuff, will work together because the geography incentivizes them to do so. When the CFC had that territory, it was the same thing. So one of the things I like to challenge when this assumption comes up is, because it is a persistent assumption that has lasted for more than a decade now, is there was some sort of magical era in EVE where there was just tiny groups of Dunbar's number tribes banging spaceships together, and nobody grouped up to gang up on each other. And there was some sort of romantic 300 Spartans having shirtless, spear-throwing affairs at each other, like drama scene. EVE has always been, human nature has always been about N+1, ganging up diplomatically and politically in order to win. Even city-states in fucking Mesopotamia would gang up on each other and form up alliances instead of being, you know, just like five guys fighting five guys.
Right, but as EVE becomes more of a solved equation, the things you could do in the past that worked, which was, you know, like high skill points, good strategies, tight compositions, running the right ships, like the things that like Rooks and Kings were famous for, became less and less possible.
You can't do that
more
anymore.
and more people adopted them. And
Rooks
so
and Kings, I mean, when you say that those like Rooks and Kings never actually did anything
you're
in politics, though. Like they would pipe bomb people.
No,
right?
You're missing. No, hold on, Mittens.
Well, let him explain, Asher. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think Boats got what I was about to say, but back then they used to run like an APOC Navy crew with triage. That was, you know, where 30 guys could change battles, and they did fight back then. This was before.
Yeah, this is 2008 and 9, before pipe bombing.
Yeah, exactly.
There was an old video. It's called there's a name for it. It's one of my favorite videos of all time in EVE, and it's about using triage as a Thanatos pilot. And this guy would drop a triage in to fight like Red Alliance, and they would shoot a tower, and like one guy. This is back when they were allied with CVA, and it was CVA versus RA. Red Alliance, back when Red Alliance. Clarion Call, that's it.
Clarion Call.
That's what Rooks and Kings was famous for. But nowadays, you can't just do that. Like, you'll see, like, PL try to, but you can't just go in with 100 dudes and expect to be able to fight the 600. It's just not going to work, right? You're going to have to call
That's why groups like PL are obliged to make alliances where they would not have had to do so.
Yeah, in the past, they never had to.
To the same degree that they did in the past. I mean, and I agree that there was no time where there was just, like, some elite PvP warriors were winning the game, but there was a time where that actually mattered more than it does today, because the level of quality of FCs, of doctrines, of basically everything in this game is so much better than it even was 5 years ago, that it is become a much more of a numbers game.
And this is our segue, because we're going right back to the other half of this top story, which is, has EVE hit a point where ISK is irrelevant? And the example I like to use here is the PL Dread cache that is stored literally everywhere. Almost on a weekly basis now, PL will drop dreads in a region that's like, oh shit, they had dreads there? Look at the MC Titan just died recently. They had dreads in Syndicate. Where the fuck did they get the dreads from? They have had dreads in Delve multiple times. They've had dreads in Fountain in the south. So it's like, dreads aren't, I mean, back, 5-6 years ago, you wouldn't see this in EVE. You couldn't just store 60-70 dreads across 8-9 different regions because you couldn't afford to. And even an alliance that had infinite money, as PL did back in the day, or even, maybe some people do now, like NC and such, you didn't have that back then, to where you could just lazily throw away a couple $100 billion ISK like it's nothing, right?
Well, I mean, is it a function of EVE? I mean, the ultimate question here is there too much ISK in EVE, and thus the risk is minimal for all parties involved? And I would ask, and my belief on this, to answer it, is I believe that we will not know what EVE's ISK balance when it comes to risk is actually like until the casino war money, the illicit casino money, is finally the swamp, as it were. If we're calling me Donald Trump, I will make until the swamp is drained.
Sorry.
Until we drain the swamp of the casino war, RMT money, the dark money that's floating around in EVE, we are not going to see what the actual balance of ISK versus reward is, because in an environment where everybody has free money and cheat codes, and there's still a shitload of ISK from the casino era that is still left in the economy. There's a lot of fleets and dreadnought caches and super capitals that are floating around that are paid for with dark money.
Right,
until these things are destroyed, until this swamp is drained, we're not going to know one way or another. Is it that we're throwing around all these ships because there's a bunch of artificial gambling money injected into the economy, or is this how EVE is today? That's my view on it. But,
right, because that's the question.
Asher.
ISK has become entirely irrelevant for one battle. For one fight, ISK doesn't matter at all. For a real war, like we saw last year, ISK is still important because people do not have the reserves to prosecute one like a real war. But yeah, if you're talking about one fight, you could just throw away 100 billion now, which would have been sort of insane years ago. Well, and now everyone shrugs it off.
See, here's the thing though, because this is what led to what I like the term led to certain things like Pandemic Legion dying and Fountain back in the day. We'll go back a bit. Pandemic Legion took a lot of their Dread stores that they had in Fountain that they had built up and used it to fight the old Northern Coalition and these low-sec honor battles. It was Shadow versus Imperium. And those two would go at it. They'd lose like 50, 60 dreads back when those were a lot. And they would do this like 3, 4, 5 times, and all of a sudden Bob came back and invaded Fountain, and now those dreads aren't there. So you're seeing this in EVE where Pandemic Horde, who for the last year said, okay, there's going to be no such thing as reimbursement in Pandemic Horde ever, now flying full MAC fleets, full reimbursement of Macarials, Guardians, everything, full carrier fleets, and reimbursing those, where in the past that wasn't a thing. You have Rorquals are now treated as mining barges. You've seen more Rorquals die this month, and like I say, April to now, like mid-April to now, than did an entire year of the gameplay, right? So it's like the amount of ISK in the game, as you say, is there's so much ISK in the game now, and it's so easy to generate on a massive like alliance level or coalition level that, you know, ISK has become to the point where it doesn't matter.
Don't confuse ballers on a budget with people with real deep pockets, though. Like, everyone in this game has a gold chain and some bling, but you rob them once and they're done. Like, there's a lot of people who cannot prosecute a real war.
Well,
like,
I think that
groups that do that are much smaller than the amount of people who can lose one Macarial fleet and replace it.
It's all fun in games until Titans start dying. Right.
So who gets punched in the mouth, right?
The reality is that this is a factors of 10 sort of escalation in terms of cost, right? You have battleship fleets, and right now, yeah, sure, you can lose at the block level, you can lose 100 billion ISK, and on a one-off thing, whatever. If you're losing 100 billion ISK every day in fights, that's essentially you're losing a Titan every day. And when you actually start losing Titans, then it's a whole different ballgame. You can lose 3 or 4 again. So you lose 100 billion ISK worth of battleships. That sucks. That's the equivalent of losing like 4 or 5 super carriers in terms of reimbursement. But you can still soak that. So now super carrier losses are really that big deal. But you're still talking about a factor of 10 jump when you're talking about one Titan. So when you lose 5 Titans, if you reimburse your pilots, you're out half a trillion ISK. You lose 10 Titans. I mean, BR5 happened.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
And that took PL and NC. offline in terms of the super capital race for 2 whole years. Now, they were able to get that back eventually because of dark money. But, you know, it's one thing to say that people have Titans, but what happens is when you lose them, which alliances can actually replace them? And that's something that people keep very secret. Like, we're not running around in Goonswarm like, I haven't told anybody what's in our alliance wallet and what our war chest is, because it would be stupid to do that.
Yeah,
because then people would know
shared on that level, right.
Because then people would know how far deep your pockets are and how much loss you can sustain. Because everybody can be like Asher's saying, a budget baller. They can front about their Macarial fleets and their nice suit, but if you spill some fucking coffee on their suit, do they have another Armani in the closet, or are they going to go crying?
Yeah, so that's a good point, because you'll see like PL do that. They'll one off 100 bill or 200 bill fighting test CO2, and then won't show up for a week, and then they'll one off it again. You know,
I absolutely love the idea that so many pilots have grinded up these Titans. There's thousands of them out there, and we're afraid to throw away a couple because it would hurt the Alliance wallet.
Yeah, it's a good view. A lot of people view EVE like that. It's almost like a Cold War in EVE currently. It's building up this massive war chest and stockpile of missiles and guns and all this shit, so that when it does happen, who's got more? Who's got more to throw at it?
That's a very good point, but I think you're right. I think there is a Cold War, and I think that dovetails into the earlier discussion, where in many ways I think we might be seeing at the FC and leader level less hate because, but not at the like line member or diplomatic level. We might be seeing less hate in EVE currently because people can't actually kill each other effectively because the soft system sucks, and everybody at the level of tribal warfare is essentially twiddling because we're forced into a Cold War, because FozzieSov is literally pointless. What are we going to go do? Take a region that we're not going to live in? We're literally like everybody who wants to murder each other in this game is sitting here waiting for outposts to be turned into citadels. So
I think that's what
the galaxy.
Right. I think that's when World War III kicks off. Everyone's stockpiling everything that they can. I mean, outside the occasional dread bomb that's like, oh hey, we can pick off this Titan. Cool, our pilots are happy. I think you're going to see that Cold War go to a hot war the day that every single fucking asset can be blown up. Right?
I think you're going to see Providence get turned into a parking lot.
Yeah, and I think all of EVE is going to do it, right? Like, as much as people hated Losec, and were like, oh, let's kill Losec. You can't kill Losec. But you can kill Providence. And a lot of people like to kill Providence. Like, that'll be like a proving ground, like we did with those iHubs. Remember what we did with those iHubs? We scorched iHubs just to show that a whole region could be burnt to the ground of iHubs in days.
Exactly. If there's anything useful to have in these citadels, now to be fair, just as trophies, people might go steal Providence's outposts and then just like a trophy room in a mansion or something. Like,
I killed 20, you killed 21.
It would because I mean you take them and then you repackage them and you move them back to your. So literally, like we could let's say hypothetically that everybody who's currently surrounding Providence, then we have a race to see who can steal the most of these outposts, and you keep their own like names for their little citadels, and then you just have them ringing in your home system. Imagine around the 1DQ1 Keepstar, we have 20 former Providence outposts with their little role player names on them, and just sort of sitting out there empty as one big go fuck yourself.
Berlin's about to be carved up between the Allies and the Axis.
You guys absolutely love this, don't you?
When you think about it,
see the glint in your eye. All I see is paperwork.
I have always all you see is paperwork. Well, you know, the thing about full-scale warfare is that it doesn't really require all that much paperwork for Diplos, because if we do turn Provi into
it's not about hold on.
Their outposts, then
from the chat, Bronzer says I think people are overestimating how much these Factum Citadels will be worth. And yeah, Jintan overestimated by an incredible amount.
It's not. Yeah, it's not about worth. Providence has prided itself on. Let me get to this real quick. This is important to look at here, and you gotta look at it through this lens. Providence is only existed in the game because they dropped 100 stations that could not be blown up. So people would invade Providence, Providence would go to Losec, and come back to their shit still in stations and take it back later because nobody wants to live in Providence. Come December...
Because it's worthless.
Come December, when all of those stations disappear, all those citadels
we can actually
disappear.
Bulldoze the shanty town.
Yeah, it's gonna be like Kowloon City, gone. It's gonna be just.
It's a shanty town. It's a space shanty town.
Yeah, it's Kowloon City because no one wants to live there except for the poor. The poor live there, right? And that's Providence. Providence has never had ballin' money as a coalition. They've never had you never look at Providence and go, oh, they've got NC Dot money, man. They're rolling in the bucks, right? One of my favorite songs is actually called Arab Money by what's the artist's name? I can't remember it now, but I love that song because it's like, you can be rich, but you ain't wealthy in Providence. You're not gonna have hundreds of billions of pilot. So Kowloon City's about to get bulldozed come December.
I mean, I think it would be really fun
Buster Rhymes, that's right.
If there's, because you know there's a limit to how much you know, because the way it would have to work is you FozzieSov these things first, right? You go hack it right before the winter patch, such that they're in your control. Then you package the things up and take them back to
or even if you don't hack it, you just bulldoze it, right? Like
later on you can blow it up, but the idea is to actually capture it beforehand, and then you cart it off, and then you put it up as a trophy, right? So essentially, it's like the looting, essentially, like in the you know, in like one of the Iraq wars or whatever, when the museum, like one of the important museums, got looted, and everybody took everything that wasn't nailed down.
Analogy here. Japanese samurai swords. Like officer samurai swords, like you capture a group and then you take the samurai sword, take it home, put it on your wall, right? We're gonna literally go into Japan, we're gonna take the Citadel, and we're gonna park it in DC. We're gonna have a row of captured Citadels in 1DQ1. A monument to our capture. And then PL's going to put a bunch of tribute. NC.'s going to put a bunch of Jita.
I think it would be an interesting contest to see. Like, maybe we can have a war game between the boxes.
If we can all, like,
who can loot the most out of Providence?
You make an agreement with everyone that you know, like get Waffles involved.
Just a little competition to see who can steal the most Providence outposts. And then we literally, just in our capital systems, we then just put them there. So, like, in 1DQ1,
you're hanging trophies, aren't you, at this point?
Yeah, exactly. In 1DQ1, you've got, like, here's our 20 captured Providence outposts.
We make it
citadels now. We don't do anything there. They're just there for decoration on the walls. But, there's lots of very angry role players who somebody spent 10 years mining in the worst region in the game to be able to afford this, and now it's our hood.
It's going to be like Egypt. It's going to be our
Mittens, I've always thought you enjoyed role playing like a manager of a company, and that's why you did this. I didn't realize you wanted to role play a taxidermist.
No, but could you imagine though? Like, you go to PL's capital.
Look how many points on this buck, this outpost here.
Yeah,
this 12-point outpost.
CCP turned it to a game. Could swarm as British aristocrats in Providence at the Pantheon.
Parthenon frescoes.
You know what? You guys can run off and do that, but when the time comes for me to remove you from the Providence shoot on kill list, I'm charging you for it.
God, can you imagine though? God. I didn't think about it that way. I didn't think you could repackage them, so that's going to be even more amazing.
You capture them first. Like, you could just blow them up after the patch, but the reason why this is going to be like a unique in history gold rush for Providence tiers is that if you Sov hack them in advance before the patch hits, when they swap over, if you own the outpost when it's transformed into a citadel, you can repackage it and take it down and move it.
Oh my God.
So you capture Providence outposts.
All of Providence.
Right
this
before
is my
patch
new goal.
Day,
this is my new goal.
Everybody just picks it up and lifts it back to wherever and puts it on the wall of a trophy.
This could be like the Potsdam conference after, or is it Potsdam is after World War II or after World War I? Either way, where you meet with all the world leaders, they get together and go, okay, I want this chunk, you can have that chunk, you have that chunk, and we just take all of them. We don't have to make it a competition. We just divvy the motherfucker up, the spoils of war. And then, after all the citadels are taken home, then we just burn it to the ground.
Dyson Swarm, the 1DQ1 sun. We can literally, like, block the sun in 1DQ1 with 1,000,000 looted citadels from around Eve, like a grand trophy project, right?
Make it like an FC game. Who can capture the most citadels? And like this is Asher's and this is Boats.
I mean, invading Provi again would be a pain in the ass, but the nice thing about this is that this is the only time you have to do it, right? Like once the outposts are destructible, you just uplift and take. Yeah, definitely it's a little bit far out of our reach. We could totally try to do that.
Take 93 PI home.
But I really like Mark Slot's idea of Dyson swarming the sun. Like, let's literally blot the sun in 1DQ1 with stolen outposts from around Eve.
All right, so yeah, we've talked about this for almost the whole hour. So yeah, that's something that's coming. So y'all heard it here first. But we're gonna go to the Imperium brings you the world hour real quick. That'll be the last little bit here for the show.
Well, the last thing we'll do here is have Artsura talk to us in interesting languages.
Yeah. So international. So, yeah, we bring international segment. And today's special guest, you've heard him here talk already, as we talked about today, is our Scottish flag bearer, Arch Sarah. He's famous for being a Gunswarm diplomat who dealt with Stainwagon and helped me a lot with Stainwagon relations during the Ketch War that went on for a short time. So, yeah, we bring him here today, and he's our international guest, and we're going to get some authenticness out of him in a little bit here because he wants to do a CD recruitment speech, so I told him he could do it, but he has to do it in Scots. So it's going to be wonderful because I'm going to have no fucking clue what he's saying. Wait, can you guys hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Artsara, this is your cue to talk.
Oh.
Introduce yourself. Say hi.
I absolutely loved your introduction video there. It's just a shame you never had the hard streets of Glasgow with somebody getting shanked.
So we go into the Scottish segment, and I've been there. I love Scotland. It's a beautiful place. The roads are kind of scary, especially when you're in the mountains. But here's the question I have for you, and I asked this on Moomin once, I think, back in the day, is does being Scottish help or hinder your work at EVE? Like, do people look at you as a Diplo and go, oh, that's a Scotsman, I need to be careful?
Oh, it definitely helps. I mean, the British tried to completely ruin our reputation around the world. But as soon as you tell somebody in Eve you're from Scotland, oh, I love Scotland. It's a lovely place.
Clearly, they've never visited.
Wow! Oh, come on, I love that place.
That is definitely true. How do you know someone's visited Scotland? In fact, better yet, how do you know someone's visited Glasgow? The Stabland.
And so,
that's funny.
When it comes to Scottish people, or Scotland in general, a lot of them are spread out in EVE, and I believe Baltic One is one of the most famous known Scottish players, EVE, for his flying of the Baltic Megatron. But
I think the Slayer is from Glasgow.
Slayer is also, I believe, from Scotland. Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the Scottish EVE community, are you guys just spread out everywhere, or is there really like a Scottish corp that carries the flag, and like this is the place for Scottish people to go?
It wouldn't be a true Scottish corp, though, so it wouldn't really.
I don't know. I mean, they'd have to.
I got it, man. I got it.
There's a softball went over the plate, and alas, it missed both.
I said British rule. Come on.
Especially in 0-0, yeah, we are heavily fractured. We are all over the place. If you go into the Tartan Army channel, which is where we mostly hang out, you'll see all sorts of people flying all over the place. There is a few dedicated corps, but they normally hang out in HiSec and normally have around 1 to 2 members.
I had a conversation at FanFest with a Scottish guy who was explaining to me that he ran into another Scottish guy, and he was like, oh, well, something, I can't even do the accent, but he was basically explaining that this other person was living in Bath now, and he used to be from some other part of Scotland, and that basically, because he'd been living in Bath for so long, he was basically British, and he unironically heard the No True Scotsman thing from a Scotsman at FanFest, and it was amazing. I was just like, wow, so... That's
wow, that chat burn. You only become Brit if you do something great, and that's why Archstar is still Scottish.
Jesus Christ.
Grit in my teeth.
Oh,
all
okay.
Right, so well, we're running out of time here, so why don't you, apparently you can actually speak Scots, and we would like to hear that.
Oh, God, no. I can just say a little few things. Bolt wanted me to do an awesome CD recruitment thing.
Yes! You're going to do it. Let's do it.
All right. Cover your ears, they are about to bleed.
Okay.
To corpse diplo ye bees for the world over, to carry aloft the fluttering brachach, to struts, to stairs, to belt and pride, to glake at feckin' chancers. Way we us fair you'll gain no past ye, for fearless is your glory bed, and in it the goon lum reeks.
That is so awesome!
Told you wouldn't understand a word.
I understood about half of it.
I agree that goons reek. Yeah.
and so everyone knows, Archsarah can play the bagpipes. So we can't do that through Discord. And then one last thing about Archsarah and the things that fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. God damn it. Oh well, yeah, that was awesome. That's even if CD's not recruiting, they recruited now because that's amazing.
We're recruiting in a couple of weeks.
That's right. There is going to be a Diplo drive for new Blueberries for actually the highest security organization in the Imperium.
Yeah, so before
harder to be in Corps Diplo than to be a director
or Bomberwolf. So we move on to real quick. We got to call it a day here. We move
on to the end of the show, and we're
going
the end
of the show. But I have one.
That's where we're.
I have one more thing I wanted to bring up because this was top topic of the NullSec Power. We're not going to transition here, but a 300 billion heist happened this week. One of the guys who from Guardian Hands Social Club got trusted by some of the people that live in Amabaki to hold on to 3 tournament ships, and he even walked out with them. What a surprise!
Man.
But the thing that's
pretty awesome.
That was pretty awesome, but at the same time, you feel
they
bad
handled
for
it really
the guy.
well. Yeah, the guys who got robbed. The guys who got robbed handled it really well. They were stand-up dudes. With
these guys had all become friends over the last 10 years, and then this guy, he felt really bad. But it's almost like when you think of goons. Oh, hey, $10 donation. Arch's speech maybe need to find a Robert Burns poem. Thanks, dude. But where this is a big deal is the joke in Goons when it comes to directors is what's your theft point? You know, when you see X amount of ISK in the wallet, when will you go fuck Goons? And so that's the case with this guy. This guy saw 300 billion. He saw these 3 fancy ass ships and was like, okay, that's my point where I fuck my friends. and then I leave them and never talk to them again, right? So that's why this is a huge thing. So, but that's it.
So, can I have 15 seconds to talk about Sadios?
Yes, yes.
Okay, here's what CCP should do to fix the Sadios. 3-minute loot timer like an ESS. Then someone has to stay on the grid and hold it. You get the fights that you want.
Oh!
I don't really care about. I really don't care about the loot or not, but I think that would cause at least people to fight on the grid, which would be better than sort of everyone warping in and
someone
and
brought
doing.
this up in Theta, and I think it was a part of what I was saying. But make it like incursions, where you have to take that gate, so they have to warp to the gate.
No,
possible fight there.
Don't do that.
Through the gate, because then they have to bring a fleet that fights. Because in the case,
then we're gonna sit 100 smart bombers on the landing point.
Oh God, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about this night. But real quick,
we
we made a promise to Arch Sarah by coming on the show. He could tell us a joke. He has a pterodactyl joke, and he has to share it.
Oh, no.
According to Twizzle Spark, this had to be shared as part of the agreement. So go ahead, Arch Sarah.
All right, lads. Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the toilet?
Oh, I know this one.
The P is silent.
Oh!
Wow.
I was specifically informed by CD that this had to be shared with the world.
This is.
You're the worst sort of people. I'm going fuck goons.
We're doing.
That was the money amount. That joke was actually the money amount. I'm fuck you all out of here.
Oh my God! Good show today, guys.
Oh, yeah,
Actually,
we gotta
really
go.
having
That
the
was
discussion
wonderful.
here and the panel. I really think we should do this more often. We should dive into these big
Philosophical
questions
discussions,
about the nature of Eve.
All
right, guys.
That's great. All right, yeah, well, we gotta go. See you guys tomorrow. In a bit.
The boat show. What are we doing on the boat show next?
Fuck, I was gonna.
Are we doing the boat show?
No, yeah, that's right. Fuck, I'm supposed to be running a rupture fleet. So yeah, we're gonna do a rupture fleet.
Yeah, you're supposed to be doing a fleet.
Yep. All right. Bye.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you next time.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.